Hi, my name is Janine Cox, and I'm an RN, and I also have lupus. I was diagnosed with lupus at the age of 23, and at the time I really didn't know much about it. So I joined every lupus organization that I knew of to try to get as much information as possible. And I found that the more you know about it and the earlier you find out about symptoms, the better prognosis you have. So it was my goal to go out into the public and make people aware of this disease and what the signs and symptoms are and what to look for. This presentation is meant to be an overview of lupus, and it's not meant to substitute for medical advice. So today we're going to give you the facts on lupus, what it is, who gets it, how it's diagnosed and treated, and how you can get involved in lupus research. Lupus is a chronic autoimmune disease that affects the immune system. Our immune system is our body's defense against infection and other diseases. With lupus, our own immune system turns against itself and starts to attack our own body in different ways. This can lead to inflammation of the tissue and damage any part of the body, particularly the joints, kidneys, blood vessels, skin, heart, and lungs. The cause of lupus is unknown, but genetics, environment, and hormones are believed to play a role. Lupus can run in families. It is heterogeneous, meaning it can affect each person differently, and it is not contagious. Who gets lupus? Lupus can affect anyone, but mostly women between the ages of 15 and 44, Blacks and African Americans, Hispanics, Latinos, Asians, or Native American individuals, and families with a history of lupus or other autoimmune diseases. There are 4 types of lupus. Systemic lupus is the most common one, and that's also known as SLE. Systemic meaning it affects the systems in the body. Lupus is the Latin word for wolf. Years ago, when lupus was first discovered, they thought the rash across the bridge of the nose and face looked like a wolf bite, and that's how it got its name. And it can affect any parts of the body. Cutaneous lupus is a skin lupus, and that causes a rash or lesions in the skin, typically triggered by exposure to sunlight. Discoid lupus is the most common type of cutaneous lupus. Then there's drug-induced lupus, which causes a reaction to certain medications. Usually the symptoms disappear when the medications are stopped. And lastly is neonatal lupus. That's a rare condition when the mother's SLE antibodies are shared with the fetus. Usually it resolves itself with no long-term effects. The most common signs and symptoms of lupus. It's important to note that no 2 cases are alike, and it's different from person to person, and it affects different organs. But the main symptoms are fatigue. 50 to 90% of people with lupus do identify fatigue as a main symptom. A malar rash, which is common on the skin, usually on the face or nose. Joint pain and swelling. Up to 90% of people with lupus do have joint inflammation and swelling. And fever. Most people with lupus experience unexplained fevers, usually low grade, under 100. Lupus symptoms can come and go. They can be mild, moderate, severe, or life-threatening. They persist or resolve and may develop suddenly over time. A sudden onset of lupus is called a flare, and this is characterized by a group of symptoms that can affect many different parts of the body. Lupus flares are triggered by stress, sunlight, exposure, weather, temperature changes, infection, and other factors. Lupus can go into remission, and remission is considered a period of low disease activity that can last for months or even years. How is lupus diagnosed? Lupus is extremely difficult to diagnose because it affects every person differently and can impact almost any organ or mimic many other diseases. And it can even change within the same person. And it's not uncommon for people to be given one diagnosis and then later on find out that it's actually lupus. So your healthcare provider is the one that typically makes the diagnosis based on your medical history, your family's medical history, physical exams, blood tests, skin and/or kidney biopsies. The American College of Rheumatology provided a list of symptoms and other measures that doctors can use to guide and determine whether or not a patient has lupus. So not all patients will get all of these symptoms, and they may not have them all at the same time. The butterfly rash, this is a rash that happens over the nose and cheeks, and it actually looks like a butterfly. Sometimes you'll get mouth sores. They can be on the roof of the mouth, the tongue, the cheeks, really anywhere. Arthritis is tenderness or swelling in the joints that can last a few weeks or even months. Inflammation of the heart and lungs. Sometimes the lining of the lungs will get inflamed, and that's called pleurisy, or the lining of the heart will be inflamed, and that's called myocarditis or pericarditis. You could have kidney problems where you'll have blood or protein in your urine, or your tests will be abnormal, high creatinine levels. Neurological problems such as seizures, psychosis, stroke, or abnormal blood tests. Some of them are low blood count, anemia, low white blood cell count, or low platelets. There are two major serious complications with SLE, and that's neuropsychiatric SLE and lupus nephritis. Neuropsychiatric SLE in lupus describes feelings of depression, headaches, lupus fog, and trouble thinking or remembering due to lupus. 25% of all lupus patients experience major depression, and 37% have major anxiety. Neuropsychiatric lupus affects 80 to 90% of people with lupus. Lupus nephritis is inflammation of the kidneys, and it occurs in up to half of people with lupus. It can go undetected and lead to potential serious issues like kidney failure. Lupus nephritis can go undetected and lead to potentially serious issues like kidney failure. Finding nephritis early is critical with early monitoring, and this can prevent damage to the kidneys or worsening symptoms. Signs include blood in the urine or foamy urine, which means that there's excessive protein, swelling in the legs, ankles, hands, tissue around the eyes, weight gain due to fluid in the body, high blood pressure, joint muscle pain, high levels of waste or creatinine in the blood, and impaired failing kidneys. It's important to note that a lot of these symptoms come later on when kidneys are actively being destroyed. In the beginning, you don't really have symptoms, anything noticeable. So it's important to go to your doctor and have blood work taken regularly and have your urine checked regularly. Invasive surgical biopsies may also be used to diagnose lupus nephritis. Serious outcomes can be prevented by seeking treatment at the first signs of kidney disease. There are now 2 approved treatments for lupus nephritis, Benlysta and loop kinase. How is lupus currently treated? While there's no cure for lupus, there are treatments that can help you feel better and improve symptoms. Treatments might include medicines like non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, also known as NSAIDs, corticosteroids, anti-malarial drugs, BLyS-specific inhibitors, and immunosuppressive chemotherapy agents. These treatments will help reduce swelling and pain, calm the immune system, and prevent it from attacking organs and tissues in the body. Only 3 medicines have been specifically developed for lupus. Benlysta is for general lupus and lupus nephritis, loop kinase for lupus nephritis, and Saphnelo for general lupus. Finding a cure. The Lupus Research Alliance and its affiliates, Lupus Therapeutics, are transforming lupus care by advancing research and supporting each research stage from basic science in the lab through clinical research and trials. The end goal is to accelerate the development of new treatments and a cure for people with lupus. Learn about clinical trials. Better treatments are only possible with results of clinical studies. Sometimes people refer to clinical trials as clinical research. Clinical research is a study of health and illness in people intended to add to our medical knowledge. Studies involve human volunteers or participants. There are 2 main types of clinical studies, interventional and observational. Interventional studies, also known as clinical trials, are studies where researchers test new ways to prevent, detect, and treat disease. Participants are assigned to a group that receives 1 or more interventions or treatments, or no intervention, so researchers can evaluate the effects of the interventions on health outcomes. Which treatment each participant receives is determined by the study's protocols that outline its objectives, designs, and methods. Observational studies allow scientists to find an association between things, but cannot prove that one thing causes another. Data are collected by monitoring volunteers and may include answering surveys and providing biological samples such as blood or urine. Can help researchers come up with hypotheses to later test in clinical trials. Consider taking part in a clinical trial. What is the purpose of a clinical trial? Clinical trials are there to answer questions. Will this drug help people, and is it safe? Clinical trial volunteers work with researchers to find safer, more effective ways to diagnose and prevent and ultimately cure lupus. There are a lot of advantages to clinical trials. You get to take control over your healthcare, close attention to your treatment by experts in the field, try cutting edge potential treatments before they are available to the public, and help others with lupus by advancing research. And there are disadvantages as well. Treatment may not work, side effects are possible, and it could take more time and effort with clinic visits and at-home monitoring. The importance of increasing diversity in clinical research. Participants in clinical trials must reflect the demographics of the disease the product is intended to treat, to know that it's safe and effective for all those people. A recent review of lupus found that 51% of trial participants were white, 21% Hispanic, and 14% were Black, while Black people make up 43% of lupus cases. This is not unique to lupus. Participants in clinical trials by people who are Black has decreased in years. Low participation by minority populations in lupus trials results in lack of clinically significant data on the effectiveness, safety, and side effects of treatments within the population. COVID-19 highlighted many of these issues. Lupus Therapeutics is working with the Lupus Clinical Investigators Network, the pharmaceutical industry, clinical researchers, healthcare providers, and people with lupus to make clinical trials more diverse and patient-centric. What is the LRA LT doing to advance research and ensure diversity? Ensuring people of color have the opportunity to join clinical trials, supporting patients with lupus at major medical centers on their decision to get involved with clinical trials through our Patient Advocacy for Lupus Studies program, organizing multicultural outreach task force to educate people of color, and educating people of all races and ethnic backgrounds about ways to get involved in clinical research, including collaborations with groups like the National Minority Quality Forum. It also encourages people of color to pursue science research careers, fostering diversity among lupus researchers by awarding grants to pursue careers in the field, and mentoring new researchers to promote career success and retention. What should you do if you suspect lupus? Write down your symptoms and talk to your healthcare provider. Ask your doctor to refer you to a rheumatologist, and visit the Lupus Research Alliance website to learn more at lupusresearch.org. You can get involved. If you have lupus, talk to your doctor about clinical trial opportunities. Raise awareness of lupus by talking to your family and friends. Learn more about lupus and Lupus Research Alliance at lupusresearch.org. You can be a part of the solution for a better treatment and cure. If you want to learn more information, feel free to visit us on social media. Thank you for joining me and helping raise awareness of lupus.